Hi folks, you're with Liz today, Taskless today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about an instance that seems just out of the people I know. When they get divorced, when the men get divorced, they decide at that time that they're going to do DNA testing on the children just to make sure that they are biologically related to the children. And I'm staggered at how many men discover that one or more of the children are not related to them biologically in any way. Now, in every instance, the guy he's dating some lady, and she says, "By the way, I'm pregnant. I don't really want to get an abortion. I'm not seeing anyone else. You're definitely the biological partner here, so why don't we get married?" And it's a kind of a soft shotgun type wedding, but surprising how many guys fall for that and just accept the woman at face value. Oh, well, if you say you're not seeing anybody else, then it must be mine. So yeah, okay, well, you sure you don't want an abortion? Oh, all right then. Well, yeah, okay, let's get married. That sort of thing. And so the shotgun sort of thing, or that sort of scam, is something that still works for women. I've known quite a few women who tried that on sort of in the 60s, 1960s. They're now in their 60s and 70s, but or 70s even, and 1970s, and they tried that. And when the guy wouldn't come at it, wouldn't go, nah, no, I'm not having that. They would either have an abortion, or if that was too difficult, they'd have go to full term procreation and then give the child up for adoption, and without having a second's thought about it. So to them, and they tried it on. They thought, I'll have a go at this. If it doesn't work, well, fine, I'll just give the kid up to adoption. End of story. So this was a widespread tactic, back in the 70s. Then it changed with abortion's more accessible. The pill was more widely accessible, and the government started to bring in things like child support. Even if it's just some one night stand, you still have to pay child support for the rest of your fucking life if you're a man. But and have no input at all as to whether an abortion does or doesn't take place. Whatever she decides, you pay, and that's how that works. And it's sort of not dissimilar, really, in this. So this guy I've known for quite some time, and we were having a chat, and so he was telling me about his travails through the court system. He had mentioned he was going through it, but hadn't kept me up to date with any of the details. It goes like a couple of kids. The first kid is not his. The second one is, but the first kid's some other guy's. Now she gets pregnant. She's seeing obviously a number of men. She gets pregnant from, maybe she doesn't know which guy, but she gets pregnant from this guy, and she probably has a good idea, and decides to. But he's a bit of a. So so later on this all comes out. He's kind of a bit of a drifter. He lives life sort of day to day, and he's kind of fun to be with, and so he gets her pregnant, but she decides, well, he's there's no future with him, and she's late 20s by this stage. She's had a good time, a lot of partying, a lot of living day to day, but she's dating this guy that I know, and he's a very serious guy, career-minded, hard work, doesn't gamble, and brings his whole paycheck home, very, very fixed, very responsible, and so on. So she thinks, well, he's, I can have a future with that guy, and he's going to buy a house, and he's going to, I'm going to have all that financial security that comes from having a relationship with a hardworking, conscientious, bright guy. So she goes, so she marries him, convinces him that he's the father, he's the parent, he's the biological parent, and off they go. Anyway, years down the track, they get divorced. She never really kicked the habit of being a party sort of day-to-day type girl, but anyway, so he he'd always had a nagging doubt, it seems, or so he claims, that the other kid wasn't the first kid, the one she used to shotgun him into marrying her, wasn't his. And I mean, it looked a lot like her, but had no resemblance to him at all. So he kind of, so he explains, had this nagging doubt. Anyway, he does a DNA test. He gets it done himself, and comes back that there's a 1 in 10,000 chance that he's got any biological relationship to the kids. So I mean, it's a very upsetting and disappointing thing. But he's on a good income, and she's coming after him for like $4,000 plus per month. She's gone and got some lesser job, so that she falls under a certain income threshold, which means he has to pay her more. Now again, he's on a good, not a huge income, but it's a pretty good income. So it would be tight. His life would be on hold while he's paying it. But from his, like, it effectively increases his. If you look at the child support he has to pay and the tax rate he has to pay, he's something like 78% of his total income is going to be taken in tax and child support. Now, according to all economic theory, when you take that much tax from somebody, in whatever form that tax may take, but when you take that much tax from somebody, you've removed all their incentive to work. Why would they want to work hard? Why would they want to work if they can keep so little of what they earn? So this is but when it comes to paying like child support and alimony, apparently that economic reality just somehow doesn't apply. So but he was going through the bits and pieces, and he actually had some recordings that he'd made, and some of the letters that were flying back and forth. So I'll just sort of give you the gist of it here. But he proves that. So he says, here's the evidence. The first child's not mine. Now the court. Remember, we're talking divorce court here, so it's run by ideological fanatics. It's not run by people who give a shit about the evidence or the law or anything like that. It's just arbitrary ideological equity bullshit. That's how it is. So the judge says, well, look, you didn't get the court's permission to do that DNA test, and you didn't get it done from a government approved, like a court-sanctioned DNA provider. Now, it actually was from a government-approved one, but the judge, trying to support the woman and force the guy to pay it, says, well, this court I didn't personally order that DNA place to do it, so it's therefore inadmissible as evidence. Now, the fact that the court can just retrospectively apply a standard that the evidence has to meet, in other words, raise the bar that he has to meet, in itself is an outrageous, trampling of due legal process. But anyway, so let's go. So the judge then says to the woman, then fesses. She then fesses up. Yep, okay, all right then. I've been caught. The kids know. So she fesses that. Now, bear in mind, she's filled out numerous documents, legal documents, to court under pain of perjury, that he is the biological parent. She then casually and openly confesses that, okay, he's not. You've caught me now. He's not the biological parent, and I always knew that. But hey, I thought I'd get away with it. I didn't think I'd be discovered. So hey, I tried. What's wrong with that? Hey, so what do I tell if you lie? But nonetheless, she's filled out legal documents that, again, under pain of perjury. Does the court hold her accountable for these multiple counts of perjury? No, not one. Not one instance is she held accountable. Now, why not? If the perjury law applies to him, why and rigorously applied to him, why doesn't it apply to her? Again, we've got this thing of ideological social power deciding how accountable someone could be. You don't have to be accountable. You don't have to be accountable if you are somebody in legal contest with a person of greater, or an individual of greater social power. And you're just not accountable. You can commit all the perjury you want. It doesn't matter. You won't be held accountable for it. I mean, that's insane. Why would anybody want that sort of legal system? Nobody would want it. And yet, not only is this the way things are done in divorce courts, that same model of jurisprudence has crept into all areas. January 6th, chasing after Trump, has crept into all areas of jurisprudence. And we should all be very, very worried about it. Every politician and every judge and every lawyer should be screaming from the rooftops about this, but nobody is. Now it went on, and so he explains, and looking at the paper and so on. He's quite incredulous. I'm sort of more across this than he is. So he was sort of you can see the look on his face. He just can't believe it. Here's a guy who believed that courts of law were courts of law. I mean, boy, did he get a wake up call. So they're trying to coerce him. So the judge then leads the witness. The judge then says to, and he's recorded some of this. The judge then says to the woman, "Okay, well, we'll only do a DNA test that the court sanctions. We'll only do a DNA test if you expressly agree." She's in the witness box at this point. If you expressly agree. Now, if you don't agree, then we won't do it. So it's up to you. He's got no say in the matter. You decide it, not him. So now, if you agree to a DNA test and it comes back that he's not now she's already confessed, by the way, in open court that he's not, but somehow the judge is ignoring that. Didn't hear that. I won't accept that as evidence. So if the DNA test comes back that he's not the parent and some other guy is who's got a lower income or a lesser income or no income, or he's dead, or he's that sort of thing, we can't find him, then you won't get as much money. So if you want to have a guaranteed good dollop of money every month, he really needs to be considered the biological parent. So do you really want a DNA test where there's a high risk, a very high risk, in fact, 100% likelihood that he won't be, he'll be proved as not being the biological parent, which means you'll lose, $1,500 a month in tax-free income. So what do you want to do, Mrs. Smith? And now she's already fessed that he's not. She already fessed she's committed perjury, but no, the judge isn't accepting any of that. No, didn't hear that. And he's leading the witness and telling her that all she has to do is say no to the DNA test. The court will then just presume, as in legally presume, that guy is the biological parent, and then we'll stick him for all the child support. Now, maybe she didn't understand what the judge was saying, but she said, "Oh no, you want a DNA test, yeah." And so again, the judge tries again to talk her out of it. All you have to do is say no, and that's it, and then you're guaranteed all this extra money. But maybe she didn't understand it, or she was too bewildered. But she said she's okay with the DNA test. The DNA test, of course, comes back and says that he's not. So then they move to another position where the judge then is saying, well, it kind of doesn't matter whether you're the biological parent or not, because there was a time that you thought you were the parent. And because of that, this makes you responsible. Now the guy argues, no, not having that. The law says, he's quoting the law. The law says, section 10, subsection 5, that you have to be the biological parent before you're liable to pay. I'm not the biological parent, I'm therefore. So the judge was clearly irritated by this. How dare you quote the law? The law, for goodness sake, how dare you quote? We're an ideological court here. We're a bunch of ideological fanatics. What are you then quoting the law to us? So then they changed it. They changed position again and say, well, why don't you just pay anyway? And they talk about this thing called social fatherhood, whatever the fuck that is. It's very communist sounding terms. But then so, well, why don't you pay anyway? Why do you care about whether you are the parent or not? So the guy sticks to his gun and says, no, whoever the biological parent is, they're the ones that have to pay. And if they're dead or whatever, then the government will have to give her a bit more money. But I'm paying what I'm legally supposed to pay, the guy says. So then the judge threatens him and says, well, if you do that, you're difficult to get on with, fucking damn Nazi. If you do that, I'll just make an alimony order against you, which is for the same amount as you would have paid in child support. So if you agree to pay the child support, then I won't do the alimony order against you. And then we can all say that was your choice. And you'll be happier that you chose to do it. And again, the guy wasn't unshakable. No, he wouldn't. And this shows how much these courts bluff. plea deals and all sorts of things. Yeah, you'll be going down for 1,000 years, so you better take this plea deal or else, motherfucker. And you imagine how many of the January 6th people got suckered on that. But the guy's been around. He's not an idiot. The guy's been around, and he stood his position. And in the end, they backed off, and so he has to pay just for one in the end. But just the antics and the threats and the cajoling and the bluffing and the intimidation tactics and so on that we used was quite incredible. Threatening letters. I mean, the whole thing. If you don't pay, we're going to have a whole new range of court hearings. Just the expenses alone of that will bankrupt you. And you'll have to pay everyone else's legal expenses. And threat after threat after threat. It was quite remarkable. Now, only because he's a sophisticated, business guy who's like me, got quite a decent understanding of laws and contracts and the architecture of how it's put together, and because of that, he had the sophistication to stand his ground. Now it's interesting. He was of the view that if they did make him pay, that he would just drop out of, as many do, by the way, just drop out of the workforce and out of society. He'd live in the room, at the back of his parents' house, and he just work for cash, sweeping floors or whatever, and that was all he wanted to do. And he was quite prepared to do it. I could see from Locken's face he would have done it if they'd come after him. But anyway, he didn't. But I want to come back to the thing. Just out of the people I know, the amount of guys who like 3 children, 2 of them are someone else's. I mean, what sort of woman is doing that? I don't understand that. And what's the point of it? I mean, maybe they've spoken about having children. The guy said, "Look, I don't want any more." So he religiously uses a condom, and then so she wants to have more children, so she gets laid by the guy down the road. I don't know. Maybe there are other factors at play, but it just seems rather strange why you'd want to do that. But anyway, just the amount of guys, I say, out of the people that I know. Now, the statistically, the lying, perjuring people that comments on these things, the globalist sort of leftist type thing, they say it's very rare, a maximum of 1%. Maybe that's true, but why are there so many people that I know, just out of the circle of people that I know, so many men who've had this, where one or more of the children are not theirs? Now, looking at it from a different perspective, all of the guys that I know are certainly from a financial point of view, and a sort of responsible people, bring their paycheck home. That's they don't booze or gamble or go to brothels or something like that. They're very, very sort of sober, responsible type folks. So when if you were a woman wanting to have a long-term relationship, you'd rather have it, instead you've got the choice. You can either have this itinerant labourer who's a lot of fun to be with and tell some good jokes, or this very sober, rather more serious guy who really applies himself and wants to have a career and buy a nice house, these sorts of things. So you look at that. So if you're a woman, you think, well, I want that guy. How do I get him? I can date him, or I can sort of use a circuit breaker here. I'm pregnant, it's yours. No, I promise I'm not seeing anyone else. And that can bag him, that can bring him in. So I'm thinking that as a catch, if you're a woman, as a catch, these guys are a much better catch than the fun people are, the fun guys. But the fun guys are still fun to be with. I mean, we all have that thing. There are, girls that I was sort of dating when I was, young guy, and there were some girls that were, a lot of fun to be with, and some of them it was great sex and so on. But gee whiz, you wouldn't marry them. Fuck, they weren't reliable, dependable, solid citizens. But they some of them looked good, or they were a lot of fun, or something. But so as a woman, I assume the same sort of parameters are there. So maybe there's an over-representation of career-minded men who get suckered into this sort of thing because they become the targets of these scheming women. Maybe that's partly their fault for making a bad choice in partner or something. I don't know, but so that's a possible explanation as to why these sort of career-minded executive type men seem to be quite well represented in these states. Now the other thing is that I've noticed that and it's pretty much a matter of record now that in order to gin up various sort of social ills, the globalist left likes to multiply the real numbers of something by 20. So let's suppose there's one rape on a college campus. They'll say there was 20 rapes. If one black person is shot by a police officer who's white or not black, could be Asian or something, then they'll say 20 black people got murdered or shot or whatever. So there's this thing, and you see the same in violence against women statistics. When if one woman got beaten up by a partner, then they'll say it was 20 women who got beaten up, and there was all straight white males who did it. Even though more than half the number was lesbians beating each other up, and those sorts of things. So these exaggerations vary. 20 is the minimum number. I mean, between 20 and 40 seems to be the shooting range there. So and this works both ways on ginning it up by multiplying, but also reducing it. So I would say that possibly as many as 20% of the children in any family at any given time are not the children of those two parents. The man thinks it might be, but it's not. And this comes back to monogamous type relationships. That given in the West at least, that given that wealth and property and these sort of things were inherited typically through the male line, this meant that it was vital that the monogamy, the very concept of monogamy, reign, and chastity and chastity belts, these sorts of things. But that women remain chaste, and that there would not be that the man who was handing the property down the line knew it was his progeny and not someone else's. Now, in societies where there is no private property, or where it's more the property that belongs to the village is very, very communal. So it may be seniority on a village council that may be handed down. But what they tend to do is women are meant to have multiple sexual partners. That's an accepted way of doing things. That it's viewed as just how things are. So that ownership, to whatever extent it might exist, ownership is handed down through the female line, because a woman knows if she's given birth to that's her child, whereas a man doesn't know whether it's his or someone else's. Now, this is also a big issue in, say, cultures where everyone's got the same skin color, the same hair color, and there's very few distinguishing characteristics between person A and person B. So it's much harder to tell. Now, it's a little bit different in Western societies where you can have blonde hair, black hair, brown hair, red hair, and freckles, non-freckles. There's a whole lot of things. So you've got a much wider range and a much greater possibility to say, well, hold on a minute. She hasn't got red hair and freckles. I don't have red hair and freckles. How come the kid's got red hair? That sort of stuff. But my sort of take is that as many as 20% of the kids that a man may think are his progeny are in fact not. I would say that that's the greater likelihood in reality in the West, and it's just something that the legal system doesn't want to have to deal with, because it has to. Once it goes down this path, it has to make women accountable for the perjury they commit, for the deception in order to gain a financial benefit. Whenever a woman says, Billy Bob's the father here, and knowing that he's not, then she's breaking a number of laws, and nobody wants to, no government agency or court wants to hold a woman accountable. The man can be accountable, And here's another thing. This guy, he was threatened with if he at one stage, if he didn't accept payment for both of them, and if he didn't, two things here. Another two interesting things just come to mind here. There's two threats they also made, that if he didn't earn the maximum amount of money, wait for this, if he didn't earn the maximum amount of money he was capable of, then that would be considered as a crime. The court would say, well, we think you could earn, I think arbitrarily, no evidence, I think you can make more money than that, get a higher paying job. And because you haven't got the highest paying job I think you get, I'm going to send you to prison. Because the more money you make, the more money we can take off you to give to her. I mean, that's that's quite an astonishing. The other thing was if the guy didn't pay, because they're trying to force him to pay for a child that's not his, remember, if he didn't pay the child support, this is when they're going through the threatening stage, when they're trying to threaten and intimidate him, that if they didn't, he'd go to prison for that as well. So they were trying to box him in. You got nowhere to go, buddy, nowhere to go. It's you do what we want, or it's prison, or it's financial ruination. And that's really the architecture of how they crush straight white males, whether it be in a divorce court or trying to shut someone down who's made an online comment, or anyone disagrees with globalization. So that was an interesting thing. But I think there's around 20% of children out there that aren't the children that the guy thinks they are, not his progeny. You've been a Taskless today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.